Good to have you here for our committee, our Accessibility and Equity Committee. So we're going to have some good discussion today. We've got some of our senior staff here. They're going to be sharing some of their visions related to transportation. And you've probably got your agendas in front of you, but what we're going to do is just go through the agenda fairly quickly and get to the good reports here. And the first time I'd like to see adoption of the agenda. I'd like to move that. Moved by Joanne and seconded by Irene. Thank you very much. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. And we also have adoption of the minutes. And happy to have you folks move the adoption again. Want to move that? Moved and seconded. Irene and Joanne, thank you very much. A little procedure we have to do with these formal meetings. Any discussion on that? And we've adopted the minutes from the last meeting. All right, so what I thought we would do is just before we get into the reports, and our staff are here going to be presenting some good reports today from information for the committee. Maybe we could just introduce ourselves, tell us a little bit about ourselves. And Gina, welcome here. Nice to have you on Zoom. You can see you big and bold up there, so you can run, but you can't hide from the committee. So let's maybe just share a little bit around the table.
Okay.
And I'll start with you, Irene.
Yes, I'm Irina Wonder, and last time I was online, and this time I decided to join you because I feel like more useful to be surrounded with smart people.
Well, that's right. Thank you for that.
So I'm originally from Ukraine, and I have autistic son, so that's why I applied for this opportunity to be joined in this committee, because I feel like maybe I can be useful for autistic kids and autistic people here in the community, because we have some things which we struggle with on living while my son is growing up, but mostly I'm of course very happy to be in Canada, and we feel much more better than anywhere where we were before. We arrived 2 years ago when we started, so before we were living in Ukraine and a little bit in Europe, so I have something to compare with. I mean how autistic kids can feel in other cities, countries, and what can we do to make their life more relaxed, better, and more safe.
Yeah, that's a good reason to be here, and we're glad to have you, and welcome here.
Thank you.
And let's go to Joanne.
I'm Joanne Kaminsky. I live in Abbotsford. I've been here 17 years. I have my own disabilities, physical, and also PTSD from work. And my husband also has physical disabilities from working in law enforcement and getting hit by drunk drivers and lots of physical injuries that are now making him even more disabled than ever before. So we are both now realizing how hard it is. And if we're both down for the count, it's even that much harder. So when I saw the opportunity, I really wanted to have a voice and learn more about what the city can also plan for being more inclusive. And if there's any problems that, and there's other disabilities that, for example, I don't have experience with autistic children. I don't have experience with blindness. I do have a mother who's deaf. So there are so many different disabilities which come with their own sets of challenges. And I just really am happy this committee is set up. So thank you for doing this.
Well, you'll definitely be an asset to the committee with that background, and appreciate you being here. And you're right, there's all kinds of issues why people can't access some of our facilities, our recreation buildings and that. So both of you will be important to contribute to that. And I might share a personal thought. I actually have a special needs. I have a disabled daughter as well. Not that that matters, but just to let you know that I have an interest in this file as well. And I was pleased that the mayor would ask me to chair this committee. And,
I think that matters a lot.
yeah, well, it's a personal thing, but yeah, my daughter's had challenges all her life. So. Okay, and we're going to go to Gina, who's zooming in on us today. Gina, go ahead, introduce yourself. Tell a bit about yourself and your background, please.
Oh, sure. Thank you. My name is Gina. I wish I could be there with you in person today. Unfortunately, not. And I'm grateful for Zoom. And I am interested in this committee as I'm finishing my last semester before graduating to be a social worker. And my interest is to work with women who have disabilities in providing access to parenting help or accessing funding. A lot of parents don't use their autism funding for their children, things like that. I also have a child with multiple disabilities and myself have PTSD from childhood trauma. So I feel very connected to everybody else who has already introduced themselves before me. Thank you for having me.
Well, great. A great trio here to contribute to our committee. We look forward to working with you and having your involvement and participation. Is going to be to the benefit of the entire community with your involvement. And now we're on to a couple of reports, and I'm going to turn it over to staff, and they're going to kind of run the show from now on. I'm going to sit back and watch them work. I like to watch people work. And who's first here? Todd, are you okay? Nathan Koenig is our Director of Engineering, General Manager of Engineering. That's quite an auspicious title. So I'll turn it over to Nathan, and we've also got Ted Stewartson here, and he's our General Manager of Parks and Recreation.
Great.
So
Thank you, Chair.
Go for it.
Appreciate it. This first report is from the city's Transportation Division, and it'll be presented by our Senior Transportation Manager, Mike Kelly. The presentation is to provide the committee with an overview of transportation's role in assisting with accessibility in our community. It talks about the alignment of our work with our official community plan, the neighborhood plans, as well as the transportation master plan. The presentation will give an overview of a number of factors, including some of the initiatives that do align with the objectives of this committee. And so I'll now turn it over to Mr. Kelly, and he'll walk the committee through this report.
Thank you, Nathan, and thank you, Chair. Hello to members of the Accessibility and Equity Committee. This is my first time in the committee here, so thank you for having me. The agenda will follow these points, begin with my purpose of being here. I really want to share with you the accessibility services that the city provides residents of Abbotsford, and the province has taken the lead by enacting Accessible BC into law in June of 2021. The Provincial Accessibility Committee was established by the Honourable Minister of Social Development and Poverty Reduction, Sheila Malcolmson. And this presentation is focusing on the city transportation component of that. One thing I'd like to just sort of set is that here we have an official community plan that is our framework of the city, and within that we have in our urban areas 4 neighborhood plans as well as serving the rest of the city. The transportation master plan serves each one of those neighborhoods in a unique way because they are different from each other and have different needs. And here, this graphic identifies the primary ways in which transportation assists in accessibility and equity of movement for residents in the city. Complete streets is a term that implies that some streets are not complete and not accessible for everybody. As the city grows, our engineering department looks to address some of our streets and introduce more ways to move around than what has been previously, the streets have previously been used for. The image is small, but on the right, that's actually Marshall Road, where we are currently under construction of a project that is introducing more walkability of that, of crossing the streets, introducing bike lanes and better lighting and access to transit. And it's just a small example of what a complete street with multimodal options really means. It still accommodates the 2 lanes of traffic that was there before, but it introduces these other ways and makes it more complete. This thinking also shows up in other planning work that we do for the future. So the graphic below shows a future imagination of what our streets can look like in the downtown, also introducing other things than simply just a single vehicle movement. Other transportation infrastructure opportunities are when we add new traffic signals or major road and bridge projects. These give us the opportunity to get creative and look at what the neighborhood or the project might need and how we can add on to it. In a growing city, public transportation is critical to providing access for people to move around for work, errands, just life in general. Conventional bus transit actually started in Abbotsford in 1986. We had about 5 bus routes and served 93,000 trips that year. Since then, as our city's grown and filled out and we've added to transit, we had in 2019, 2.4 million trips, and we are projecting this year to be 4.5 million trips, or about 13,000 rides per day. So that's just a little bit of an example of how people are accessing our transit system. Now, that's conventional. The second bullet is our Handy Dart service. Of course, that is providing a service to those who are unable to use conventional bus service. Handy Dart is scheduled appointments. It takes you point to point from your location to where you want to go and returns you. Believe we are projecting this year 68,000 trips or for the year, or about 183 trips per day on average, people moving around the city that way. So of course that number is way smaller. But one thing that we are working with our partners in BC Transit right now through council's endorsement is there is a bit of an inequity in Handy Dart in that it is currently not serving residents on Sundays or holidays, and we hope to get that this year. We're just waiting on provincial throne speech and some announcements that we are, fingers crossed, hoping are coming, and that will make Handy Dart 7 days a week, just like our conventional bus service. I'm not going to read all these to you, but here are ways that the city looks to remove barriers and make it easier for people to access that public transportation option. I think most recently we've had some technological advances in method of payments. So if you do not have cash on you, or if you haven't gone to a pharmacy or a city facility to buy paper tickets, you are now able to, either through an app or a card or debit, just walk onto a bus, tap, and off you go. Yeah. So accessibility and equity also factors into our thinking when we talk about transit, but in an infrastructure perspective. So right now we are under construction in our downtown, a 2-block segment of Montrose, where we had the opportunity to design and to look at a today's standard on an old street. And we are underway right now. We have wide sidewalks, better lighting, amenities. We've introduced, well, everything you see on there. I don't want to read it word for word, but it's an exciting opportunity in a compact downtown to take 2 blocks and to really look at it with this type of lens and say, well, what could we do in an older downtown that has some of the challenges of an older downtown with narrow sidewalks and not great lighting? And we're well underway. We intend to open in September of this year, as long as everything goes on. Well, knock on wood. It's like an old house when you get into an old part of town. It can be challenging. So carrying on something other than just driving or busing, it's moving around on foot or on wheel. Every year we have an annual program to install pedestrian countdown timers and the audibles for the visually impaired. We install crosswalks and sidewalks every year. And that just speaks to that as well. This slide is also giving some recent snapshots of projects that we've worked on. So you'll see in the image yellow tactile mats and more attractive and accommodating surfaces. The picture on the bottom right is Burnham Park, I believe, where the road was simply just 2 lanes of asphalt, and you can see we've narrowed it down, making it a shorter and easier crossing, a wider landing area if you're in a wheelchair or just a stroller or cycling. You have more space, and that's pedestrian activated crossing where you touch the button and the lights start flashing and there's new lighting around it. So a much safer access to a park. That's the kind of work we are doing every year. If you are on wheels of scooters, bikes, e-bikes, anything, rollerblades, we have a program that is creating space for you on our existing roads through our bike lane program. You will see if you travel around our city, some of our major intersection at conflict points, they are now introducing green paint. It's for conflict zone to alert the motor vehicle operators that they're entering an area where cyclists or people will be, vulnerable residents will be present. And a big opportunity for the city right now is with the Highway 1 widening. The province has a mandate to include with the highway widening project, which everyone simply thinks is about the roads and moving trucks and goods. They have a mandate to introduce multi-use pathways for walking and cycling into that highway project. So a significant part of our time as staff here is trying to help with the design and inject what we believe Abbotsford needs out of that project. So we're working on that. I would like to just say sometimes we run into challenges while trying to do that good work. And an example I'll show on the first bullet there is a specific spot on the Discovery Trail across Highway 11. It's at Wilband Creek Park. Now, we would love to make the Discovery Trail connection there. However, it's a provincially owned and operated Highway 11, and there's some designs that we have to overcome there. And also the railways that have their own Rail Safety Act, and those are federally regulated. So we have senior levels of government that have their own requirements and things that we are working through, and those processes take time, but that's what we're on. And we have goals in our plans that I alluded to a little bit earlier in the presentation on high mobility roads like South Fraser Way. The graphic below there shows that we intend to separate people and cyclists from the traffic themselves and to make that a more pleasant and safer way to move down a major corridor. And the last point is we are also actively working on an actual cycling map that will be distributed out to those who wish it in the future. I'm sorry I went sort of fast there, but I didn't want to get too much into the weeds of it, just to let you know that that is the type of work we are doing. However, I did want to ask these questions here of just to sort of prompt any questions or discussions you may have. What are your thoughts on engineering's role in accessibility? Are there some opportunities that we could look into on your behalf? Is there something more we could be doing? I tried to keep it high level and it's not an exhaustive list, but I just wanted to say those are the things we're working on. And
Thanks, Mike. That was good. Good capsule summary, and looks like Joanna's got something she'd like to share.
Sure. I know we're very big on including the cyclists and making things better for them. What about a map that shows accessible nature paths, parks, that kind of thing? Because we talked about it at the last meeting where some of the gravel that's used will literally stop a wheelchair in its tracks. And so there's little things like that to make some of the trail, and I know it's not, I think there's steep cliffs and stairs, you can't put an elevator out in nature necessarily, but for the places that are, relatively easier, but also if we had a map of that, it would make it a lot easier for people with disabilities to find where they could go and take advantage of our beautiful city.
Mike, what do you think?
I think it's a great question, and thank you. Just through the chair, I wanted to make very clear, so my lens on this presentation was on transportation, so those 4 key elements of transit, walking and cycling, and driving. However, fortunately, our GM of Parks is here, and let me throw your question. No, it's a great question. So my focus in this presentation was on the road itself and how can we make it safer and better on the road. But outside of the road, that really is over into the parks area themselves. So if you don't mind.
So through the chair, great question on that. I hope the committee would be happy to know that we are actually undertaking a trail and off-road cycling strategy starting in 2024. So that's led by a few people you're going to meet in a couple of minutes here on the next presentation. That is designed to look at all of our trail system in parks, and we're working closely with our colleagues in engineering around connecting that into some of the built infrastructure in the city and roadways and whatnot, so that we are ensuring that we're providing a good trail system for everybody moving forward. And we've actually had some discussions already on that in terms of trail surfacing and how we rebuild boardwalks and what's the most accessible kind of avenue for those projects. So I think there's an opportunity at a future meeting for us to talk about that plan overall and get some input from the committee so we can make sure that we're kind of steering that in the right direction, so to speak.
Sorry for the misunderstanding.
No, it's you got through it's a great question, and I'm very proud that we're able to say like we're actually are planning a strategy this year that would start and focus on exactly what you're speaking to, is making that trail network accessible.
Just before we leave that, one of our other general managers is with us. Maybe introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, through the chair. So I think it's a very good feedback. I've actually experienced it myself at my church. I've seen when we try to push the wheelchair, it really digs into the gravel. So I will review it with my team and see how we can solve that problem for existing trails. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Good question. Gina, I believe, has a query for us.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to say such an excellent presentation. I ride my bike to the university and I ride along McCallum in Marshall area, and I find it terrifying. So I'm really happy to see these improvements. And one suggestion I had is your idea of having the green in the high conflict areas is so good that I wonder if you might incorporate it into the roundabouts, because I see a lot of conflict with bikes and cars trying to navigate through it. And I don't know if that's possible, but I just thought I'd bring that to your attention.
Mike?
Yep. Thank you, Gina. Through the chair. Yes, roundabouts are very good from a traffic flow perspective. They do move vehicles through in a more efficient manner, sometimes in the right conditions. However, they're in anything in life, there are some drawbacks, and some people say that the pedestrian or the cyclist experiences a bit of a challenge going through them, as the drivers are more focused in on their motions and movements and not as aware under a stoplight condition of a traffic signal where nobody moves. The pedestrian and cyclists have clear space. It's more of a fluid situation. So that is some feedback we generally get. One thing I do want to just point out, when we talk about the roundabouts, either at McCallum or say the old one on Mount Lehman by the High Street Mall, those are provincial assets. So the Mount Lehman, it's the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. That's not to say that we can't work with them and talk about that experiences, but those are some of the realities. Is like the Mount Lehman Road roundabout, which is now gone, by the way, and it is a traffic signal. But in that case, that was a decision made by the province for themselves. So in this case, we can certainly raise it, but I do also want to say that one of the reasons why the city was successful in partnering with Active Transportation BC, the offshoot of the Ministry of Transportation, in building the Salton pedestrian and cyclist overpass there, was exactly what you just said. Some of the challenges of working their way through the McCallum roundabouts. We were trying to convince you to not go through that and use the Salton Road overpass as an alternative, but everyone has their own reasons to use it. We can, with the Highway 1 widening project that's happening, we have an opportunity to revisit all the interchanges and overpasses that are actually MOTI owned and maintained and operated. So your timing is perfect, both in the issue and in the opportunity to maybe make it better. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Mike. And yeah, I can
Thank you.
relate to that. I ride a bicycle a lot too. And those roundabouts are scary. They are scary. And try riding that, or even joining onto Sumas Way at, right by the Dairy Queen there. That's not a roundabout. That's really scary. Don't ever try that. I've done it. Okay, we've got some people that have joined us on staff, and I would like them to introduce themselves as well, so they get their names to prove that they've been at the meeting. It's a very good thing. So I'll start over here, and we'll just work our way around. If you could just introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Katie McDonnell. I work with the committees, so organizing the meetings and whatnot. So
Good.
there's a few of us that are the face behind the committee meeting emails that you guys get.
And, yep,
And I'm Tammy Katola.
Hey,
I'm
Tammy.
Assistant City Clerk for the City of Abbotsford. I am also a member of the Ledge Services team, and yes, we deal with council, committees, bylaws, policies, all of that. So if you ever have any questions, you'll see a lot of emails coming out from our team in
Yeah.
regards to the setup of these committees and
that's good. Yeah, Tammy knows everything, yep.
I'm Pradeep Agnihotri. I'm the General Manager of Operations. Basically, anything that comes on Public Works. So if there are issues and challenges, that's my area that you call to, for my staff to go look into and resolve.
That's good.
Gabriel Joseph, I'm the City Clerk, Director of Legislative Services.
Hi, good afternoon.
You're hiding at the back, but I saw him.
Hiding in the back. Mark Neal, General Manager of Planning and Development Services with the City of Abbotsford.
Hi, I'm Gordon Beth, the Director of Transportation for the city.
Hi, Danielle Pope, Director of PRC Planning and Business Services, and you'll see me again in the future when we kick off the trail strategy.
And I'm Corey Neshi, Manager of Planning, Partnerships and Policy.
I'm Maggie and I'm the Planning and Partnership Coordinator.
So we've got a great contingent of staff today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I think somebody else had a question. Yeah, go ahead, please.
First of all, thank you for solving almost all our problems with transportation in this presentation. Because like this is almost all questions which I had even before I knew the topic of today's committee. I had like, oh my God, why they don't do this? But then I understood because I'm from Europe and we mostly walk there and use public transport. In Canada, people more like you have many cars and you always drive and you have like nothing about transportation or like people who just like or have to walk because like I don't have car, I don't drive, and I don't feel like I'm ready to drive right now because for me it's a little bit challenging and like it takes time for me. So we walk a lot with my son, and as I told you before, my son is autistic, so he can be not very like good behavior in during walking. So we walk very often near very dangerous roads, and always was a problem why this pedestrian way is so narrow, because we just I always have to keep him because to hold his hand because he likes to play on the way, and he more or less like listen to me, but sometimes he's just he has a lot of like a good mood, and it's always very big danger for him and for people who are driving nearby. So I was thinking why it's not possible to make more wider pedestrian ways, because not just for me. Of course, I'm very important for this city, but not just for me. There are so many people who arrived from Ukraine and from other countries for these 2 years while we are here. So I saw how many people started to use public transport. Used to, it was just less people. I mean, it could be 2-3 people in a bus. Now, when we use bus, we see so many people inside. So people need it, and so people walk a lot, and so many seniors arrived from other countries and from Ukraine as well. And for example, my mom, she doesn't speak English, and once she started to learn how to use public transportation, and once she got lost using bus number 3, because it has 2 different ways, but from the same
Started.
exchange, bus exchange, and she took 3 times the wrong way one day, and she was like, "Oh my God, no!" And then when she decided to go out from bus, and she understood that she must to change bus stop, but she didn't see any seat for people and any information which buses go there. Just because she can read a little bit, so she saw bus stop and nothing there. So in this case, I started to pay attention if we have many bus stops like this, when people don't understand what kind of bus they can use from this bus stop, and if it's works or not, because if you, especially for people, older people, for them it's important, when you see seats for people, so it's bus stop. But if you just see note that bus stop, maybe it's just something, but it doesn't mean this, so it's not look like a bus stop. So it was very hard, and she wasn't sure if she can get other bus, and she couldn't ask anybody, and she doesn't have internet and telephone, because she is and she cannot even to translate, to ask what kind of bus she can take from this bus stop. So it was a little bit problem, and I don't know why she didn't call me. But she even couldn't explain where she is, because she didn't see any numbers of name of the street. So it was a hard situation at the moment. So what we need, as you said there, more seats for people who are waiting for bus, and my personal begging to make roof under them, because we use it very often, and you have so many rains here and bad weather conditions, so we always sit lost office, on this bus stop and waiting while the bus will come, and so and making almost the same noises. Lost office.
That's good, thank you. There's an unfortunate statistic out there that Abbotsford has the highest percentage per capita of automobile ownership of any community in Canada or in British Columbia. So that's sort of the bad news in terms of your situation. There's so many, we noticed the sheer preponderance of vehicles in our town, planning for communities and neighborhoods, all the parking that's going to be involved. So that's a whole other issue. But thank you for sharing those comments, they're very helpful. And Mike's taking a couple of notes here, so.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mike, anything else you want to share? Or?
I think what I'd like to say to the committee is, thank you very much for sharing that. You are correct. I was jotting some notes down, and perhaps we can talk after the meeting is done. To keep the committee at the right point, if you have anything specific in your travels that you're seeing that you're not sure of, or you want to ask questions or just make a complaint or request for something, there's several ways you can do that. Might not have helped your mom, but we have the city app where it's very easy to just take a picture of something or to write a question, and it'll get sent to us and sent to the right department, whether it was Pardeep in operations or for ourselves in transportation to look at, or whatever it is, if it was about a park. Or if you're not comfortable doing that, you can write a letter, email, phone call, come in person like you are today, and just come to the front desk and say exactly what you just said. These are ways that we as a city are sort of open for business. I think the intent of that's great conversation, and the intent, I think, for this committee is to go after some policy pieces. So of that, we might look at what is a good policy for the city as it relates to sidewalks in the future, and we'll keep it at that level. But if there's things that you see when you're walking with your son, you can contact me directly or make a note in the app, or we're on all the social media too, I think Facebook and X and all that stuff.
I follow, I think, in Instagram.
Great. Oh, or Instagram, there you go. All the things I don't have, but I'm glad you do.
Hey, I'm even on Instagram.
So, but yeah, that would be a great way to communicate your ideas and thoughts.
Thanks, Mike.
So.
Any other questions for Mike? We'll excuse him and move on here. Thank you very much. That was helpful. And
I do, sorry, one more question, Mike, because it's very important for transportation.
Sorry.
Because my husband recently needed to go to some hospital appointments, and I had surgery, so I wasn't able to put his wheelchair in the van. We were looking into options for other people to get him to his appointments.
Okay.
And one of them was a private, like, hospital transport.
Yep, I've seen the vans around.
Right, and it's very cost prohibitive. It's like $300 to take someone to a doctor's appointment. So I guess I don't know if there's any situations where that could be free for somebody, but the private way is, so my question, I guess, would be, is there some consideration that could be discussed about kind of another branch of like Handy Dart?
I was just gonna
You know,
ask, so
that's
he
a
wasn't a
little more-
candidate for,
Because taxis are not necessarily reliable, Uber, for having the vehicles equipped or the people having the knowledge of how to help a disabled person physically, like to get their wheelchair in or whatever. So it's really, I think, sporadic and hit or miss. So I personally, I do all of that for my husband, but I can't for a few weeks. So we basically are stuck at home unless I have a friend who can go with him to an appointment, wait around, come back, because he has zero independence unless he has some assistance from me. And then that takes away his autonomy of being able to go out to his own appointment if I'm, unavailable for whatever reason. So we've been facing a lot of challenges that way, and it was something that I hadn't really thought of. But when I was doing a bit of research, Handy Dart, of course, we needed it last minute. Oh, well, it takes about a month or two to get actually.
Yeah, it's just
So I'm like, okay, well, that's off the table right now, but there's a lot of hoops to jump through a little bit for Handy Dart. But it's something that we didn't even consider applying for ahead of time. Like I think I just assumed I would always be the caregiver and nothing would be happening to me, but do you know what I mean? So is there like
yeah,
with
thank you.
taxi
Or do you want to do it
companies, or
offline?
is there like some sort of policies where to have vehicles equipped and stuff?
Thank you for the question through the chair. So the city's role in public busing, or if conventional isn't an option, of course, Handy Dart is the mechanism we use as a city to try and facilitate it. You're right, there is a sign-up period, and within Handy Dart, if for some reason the Handy Dart is full, they do send a taxi in replacement of the Handy Dart. So there is that. It's called the Taxi Saver program. So they send a taxi outfitted to support an individual in a wheelchair. But you're right, that is the city's way of partnering with BC Transit to deliver those types of services. What you're describing sort of is be more something that we should connect with Fraser Health and have an individual need to connect with a Fraser Health, either the hospital or a specialist or that type of an appointment, and they have a mechanism to transport patients around. But it sounds like you may be in a unique situation where that perhaps wasn't an option to work with Fraser Health, a nurse to connect your transportation needs. We don't have a city program that I can direct you to because we channel our efforts into conventional busing, or if that doesn't work, Handy Dart. So I think much like the last comment, that perhaps we can talk after the meeting offline and I can learn a little bit more details from you, and I can rack my brains a little bit and see what we can find through our network and see what's out there. But right off the top is there's not a third transit option that is a city program that fits exactly what you've described.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Thank you. Good question. Mike, will keep that in mind. We can talk to him a little bit later after.
Yeah, I'll be
offline. Any other questions? Jane, have any more on this? If not, we'll press on with our next presentation. Todd Stewartson is our General Manager of Parks and Recreation, and I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Chairperson Gibson. You've already met Maggie Lugband, so she is our presenter for this next topic. She is also supported today by Danielle and Corey. They're part of kind of the working team on this, so you're going to see them a few times over the next number of meetings as we roll through this process. Maggie is presenting the community engagement process for the development of Abbotsford's accessibility plan. And there's really two objectives with this presentation. One is to educate the committee on the process that we're planning to undertake. And second, probably more importantly, is to get any sort of input or direction or guidance the committee has in terms of how we engage the community on this. One of the topics we've talked about as a staff team across the whole range of departments is the fact that we as professionals are, hired for professional designations and work experiences and, associated responsibilities. But it doesn't necessarily come with any lived experience in the accessibility or equity realm. So we're looking to this committee to ensure that we haven't missed anything, there aren't any gaps in terms of how we engage the community in any form. So with that, I'll turn it over to Maggie for an excellent presentation.
Thank you. Okay, so I am here to present the community engagement process for the development of the City of Abbotsford Accessibility Plan. So the purpose of this presentation is to provide a detailed overview of the community engagement process and a draft of the City of Abbotsford's Community Accessibility Plan, which focuses on an inclusive, fostering an inclusive environment and removing barriers for members of the community. And as was mentioned, we are going to be relying heavily on this committee for your input and your expertise. So just some background, in 2019, the federal government passed legislation called the Accessible Canada Act, or the ACA, and with a goal for making Canada barrier-free by 2040. And there are 7 priority areas that you can see. Part of the mandate is for legislation to work with the provinces and with the territories to coordinate efforts on accessibility and to implement policies and programs that address it. These are just some of the requirements for the ACA that they must follow. So in 2021, the province passed legislation called the Accessible British Columbia Act, or ABCA. And this legislation was for municipalities to develop an accessibility plan. And it came into effect in 2022, and those are the prescribed. And so the organizations have to have an accessibility advisory committee. We have to develop an accessibility plan, which is what we're trying to do here today. And then create a public feedback mechanism, which is basically just communication channels to be able to provide your feedback. So these are the requirements that the accessibility plan must follow, with emphasis on the principles that you see there to be considered. And the accessible employment practices, I'm on a different slide here. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So staff will consult with this committee regarding any comments that they receive from the public. So these are the 4 focus areas for the accessibility plan, and it also aligns with the city's values. And the city also has accessible employment practices, which is addressed by the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, which is led by staff. So the rest of the presentation is going to be focused on the engagement process. So there are 22 neighborhood communities within the city. And the locations for the engagement sessions that were selected are meant to be spread out throughout the community boundaries, so it can be, so people can plan for their attendance. So of the 22 neighborhoods, there are 9 neighborhood communities that were selected. As you can see on the left, there are the 9 neighborhood communities. And on the right are the locations that were selected for these engagement sessions. So elementary schools, community centers, and libraries. So these locations are close in proximity to public transportation. They have access to parking, washrooms, large hallways, large room spaces. They're located within neighborhoods, so they're walking distance to residential houses. And they can all accommodate wheelchairs, scooters, service animals, and support workers. So this is just a visual map of the city's boundaries. The red dots that you see there are the locations for the engagement sessions. And as you can see, staff did spread out all the locations to be able to access, for the community to access any of the locations to attend. In 2014, the city adopted the spectrum for public participation. So we're going to just focus here on the involve there. So this project is going to focus on involving the community as experts in this realm. So staff are looking to residents for feedback and advice and recommendations so we can provide solutions on making the city more accessible. So this is a timeline of the engagement process, and it's summarized in 4 main categories: preparation, consultation, findings, and the approval process. This slide discusses the preparation part of the project, which includes project research, creating and launching engagement materials, the Let's Talk Abbotsford page, which will be the primary source for information. It'll have the online survey and discussion boards that'll be used at the meetings. The Let's Talk Abbotsford page will be the main space, as mentioned, for community members to find information about this project. It'll have the project plan and timeline, where the engagement sessions are going to be located, the dates, the times, and the online surveys are going to be there too. The online survey will be there too. So postcards and signs will be used to inform the public of the project. Engagement materials will have large print formats. The color contrast will be considered. Language translations, the QR code will be printed on all materials, which directly links back to the Let's Talk Abbotsford page where all project information is found. And postcards will be mailed out to residents 2 weeks prior to the first engagement session so they can plan their attendance. Postcards will also be targeted as well. Staff are going to be using a variety of formats to meet the needs of the public. And the Let's Talk Abbotsford page has the ability to be translated into multiple languages. Punjabi will be printed on some of the materials as there's a large population here in Abbotsford. So this is the second part of the project phase, the consultation phase, which has in-person and virtual offerings that are scheduled over multiple days. So if one day doesn't work for a resident, they can choose any of the other days. There'll be different times available too. So the idea is to accommodate as many schedules as possible. The schedule might shift a little bit. As you can see, March 7th is next week, and we're still awaiting feedback from this committee. Staff researched 31 organizations that support individuals facing barriers through sport, literacy, learning, housing, transportation, employment, and financial aid. So that's the first 15 that you see there, and the next. And staff are open to feedback from this committee. These organizations will also be invited to a closed engagement session. Staff are going to be approaching these engagement sessions with an open ear, and we are prepared to receive feedback in a variety of ways. Staff are aware that relaying information and listening to feedback may take a little bit longer in these sessions, as per some others, because required additional resources might be needed for like translators, and we'll have volunteers on site to help move around, to help residents move around the space and interpret some of the engagement boards. So the scheduling will account for that. Staff will also ensure that there's not too much information or subjects covered throughout these sessions, because we want to make it very easy to flow through and to be engaged within. And so the idea is to make space for these participants to feel welcomed to share their stories. And the public will be welcome to provide further feedback through the Let's Talk Abbotsford page. And that's where the online survey will be as well. These are some of the potential subjects that were selected by staff, and they were formulated through council-approved documents such as the OCP, financial plan, and master plans. And we have aligned it with the current strategic plan. So now staff have an understanding of what we're currently planning on doing and what we'll be doing in the future. This list also follows the legislation from the ACA and APCA on priority areas. And once again, we are open to any suggestions this committee may have. This is the third part of the project, findings. Staff will review and interpret the feedback heard from the engagement sessions with the goal of having a draft in place for the July 18th. Staff are going to use the reports that are downloaded from the Let's Talk Abbotsford page, because that's where the online survey will be. And we will collate the online survey data results with the engagement results. So the fourth part of this project phase is the presentation schedule for approval from this committee as well as council. And staff will be preparing to have a final draft in place by the end of July. So the recommendation is that the Accessibility and Equity Advisory Committee recommend that council approve the community consultation process outlined in this report.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, good. Thank you, Vice Chair, from our clerk. Thank you very much. Any questions before we move on? Any from the committee? There's that old joke about the guy who sells hearing aids from door to door, but his best customers never heard the bell. I think the point, you like that. I guess the point is that you can tell staff have put a lot of work into this to make this viable. So you may know somebody who should access this. Tell them. Don't just depend on people to do it themselves, because sometimes people are shy, or maybe their disability precludes them from being involved. So that's the really good thing about this. It's very detailed, and I think we're going to get a great result. And it's going to be dependent on the committee as well. It's going to come back, as you know, to the committee, and then it'll come to council. So when we go out and do these various committee meetings, you're certainly welcome to come out and participate if you can. I'll try and get to the ones as many as I can, so the committee will be involved. So thank you very much. Any queries on that? Maybe something you'd like to ask about at all? Jana, have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Chairperson Gibson. I would definitely come out to one of those sessions. The only input I had or something to consider is that I'm wondering if there's anything that could be done to make it inclusive for Indigenous people. I'm not sure what that would look like, but I think that would be a nice thing to add in there along with the other languages that will be provided. Thank you.
Indigenous Elementary School, right?
Through the chair, in some of the locations that we have chosen, the Matsqui Elementary School or the CMATH Elementary School, right now we're in the process of developing the facilitation guide. So we know what we're actually going to be doing within these engagement sessions, and we are planning to do the landing remarks and
right. Yeah, that's a good question.
We'll also, be included in the organizations that are going to be invited to the engagement sessions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay. There's a recommendation. Like maybe get a mover and seconder. Oh, do you want
to accept this?
Moved and, okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Contrary? Carried. Okay, thank you very much. Great. Okay, let's.
So maybe if I may,
Yeah.
through the chair. So maybe just as a wrap up, you're going to see this fairly intensely over the next few meetings. As Maggie mentioned, in May, we're going to be back with some of the preliminary results of the consultation, right? Starting to build that accessibility plan. We'll give you more than 24 hours. That's on us, not on clerks, right? When we added it to the agenda. So you can digest that information accordingly. And then we're hoping that by the time we're at July, we're actually sitting, presenting you with the draft plan for your consideration, hopefully approval at that point. And the last thing I want to stress is the fact that that plan doesn't sit static for 5-10 years or whatever it may be. That's typically what we do with master plans. The accessibility plan is designed to be reviewed on an annual basis,
right.
And hopefully checking things off we've achieved, adding things then that we've heard over the course of the year, or that maybe align with the strategy that council has recently endorsed, so it will be something that you will see on an annual basis.
Good point, yeah.
Thank you.
Gabriel, do you have something you'd like to share with the committee?
Just one thing just a reminder to the committee, I know it's very common these days when people are responding to emails to not send a response because people get a lot of emails. When we send you an invite for the committee, please respond directly to say you were coming or you're not coming. It helps us understand what we have for numbers, if we have quorum, that sort of thing. So flood us with all the emails you need to because we need to know. So if you can do that, that'd be great.
Good point. We thrive on quorums around here. Thank you very much. Good participate. Any closing comment before we wrap up today? Our next meeting is in May. Do you have that date handy or?
30th.
Okay, so you'll be notified in plenty of time and we look forward to having you back again. Yeah.
Just one thing, I'm not sure if it's connected to today's subjects, but it's bothering me because I'm doing volunteering, cleaning up the city from litter sometimes when I have free time, and I show to my son how to do it too, and my mom started to be involved as well. But what problem we met when we carry all these litters from everywhere, we don't have so many bins on our way to throw it somewhere. Sometimes, what I can compare with Europe, for example, in Ukraine, we had more litters, not bins, near the corners and the crosses of the streets, so people can throw all their garbage there, what they have with them. But sometimes I could just carry 2 or 3 big plastic bags with all this garbage on my way to a superstore or somewhere, and you have nowhere to throw it away, and it's so important to have all this space, all these bins on the way, because maybe it would make people not to throw things on their way. Maybe at least it's easier to put some in a bin, but especially for teenagers, because they just throw away everything. It's not guaranteed that it will be clean all the time, but it can be at least a little bit, 1 or 2% chance to have more clean streets and all beautiful city places from all this litter. So this is what I'm asking, if it's possible to put more bins near bus stops and near crosses of the street where people can throw their garbage.
That's a good point. Todd?
So maybe through the chair, I'll provide a bit of information, then Mr. Agotri may have some additional comments. But so with your permission, I'd like to pass your information along, the clerks has, to our volunteer coordinator. So we have a volunteer coordinator in the city who actually supports people that are doing community cleanup, essentially sharing their time or talents for the betterment of the community. That individual actually works with a number of departments, including operations, to help facilitate exactly what you're speaking to. Where are we picking up, invasive species that people are pulling or garbage that people are collecting or whatnot. So there is an avenue to do that. I don't know if Mr. Agotri, if you have additional points.
Through the chair, so once that's done, it actually protects you as well, because we carry liability insurance for volunteers. So it's also for your protection too. Once that's done, volunteer makes connections with my staff in the operations, so we know where you're leaving that, and we can send staff out there to collect the garbage.
Thank you. I think I know about this because I'm officially registered in this.
You are? Okay,
yes,
perfect.
So
Perfect.
it's not just it is my, it's all connected. My personal initiative, because I like to help in this case, and I'm officially in this volunteering system. But it's still hard, because if I'm going somewhere, it's especially when I was living near a recreation center last year, and we were walking, we start from Guildford Drive and walking to No Frills, and there is nothing, like just no frills, very small bins, but I have two big plastic bags, and just like you have nowhere to throw it away after all. So it's like no chance to help city to be clean, because for me it's not hard to pick up all these things, because I just spend planning my time and kind of like fun with my son to do all these things together. But after all, I just like, with all this stuff, I don't know where to throw it away. And I understood, and I just see sometimes so many old stuff in the bushes or somewhere, like, and you try to take it out from there, and then I understand people have sometimes maybe they don't have where to put it, so they leave it or they lose it, and like, oh, I don't see it, and but maybe it would make easier life. Not everybody knows where to call to take to pick up all this garbage, but if you see bin and you just try to make this habit to throw it in the bin, but not to throw it in the bush or hide it somewhere.
Okay. If you're okay with it, I would like to have one of my staff members connect with you
Yes, it's okay.
on this. Okay, so I'll
Okay,
get
great.
the information if that's.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for sharing that. That's important and helpful to our staff. I know they're going to track it down, and Pardeep will be in touch with you.
I'll have one of my
Okay,
staff. connect.
any further discussion for the good of the committee? So we'll be meeting again in May. Look forward to, and as our clerk said, make sure that you let us know that you're going to be here so we have a quorum. That's a good thing. Thank you very much, Gina, for joining us on Zoom. And I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved and seconded. Thank you very much. Any discussion? All in favor, contrary, carried. We are out of here. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jan.